Hello my fellow crocheters, it's here from the Working Yarn. Today I'll be showing you how to crochet the Snowy Comfort blanket. For the written pattern, head over to my blog. A link will be provided in the description below. The blanket is really nice and cozy with snowflakes throughout the blanket, and it uses the corner to corner stitch or C2C stitch to make the blanket. I also provided on my blog PDFs of the graphgan. Now this is like the first draft, so the PDFs will be much nicer looking, but as you can see I have 5 snowflakes throughout the blanket, and with corner to corner you start from one corner and you'll work your way outwards, and then you'll start decreasing at some point. And to keep track of which row I was in, I just crossed off that row once I was done with it, and it will help you when using it know when to switch over from the white yarn to the blue yarn to make the snowflakes, and then back again. So the finished blanket, I chose to do the twin size option on the twin size blanket, so it measures with the border. Bring that in. So with the border, it measures 69 inches by 98 inches, and without the border 66 inches by 95 inches approximately. Now the other graphgan PDF that I have on my blog is if you want a smaller version of the blanket. It still has 5 snowflakes, but it measures 48 inches by 65 inches with the border, and without the border it's approximately 45 inches by 62 inches. For this project you'll need 8mm L hook, scissors, and tape measures so you can keep track of the size if you would like. Not necessary, but if you would like. I used a Bernat blanket, and I'll put in the description below. I did a yarn 101 on this blanket, and this is the chilled blue, and then I used the vintage white. Now I used the vintage white as my main color and the chill blue for the snowflakes, but you can redo the color scheme if you want a darker blue for the snowflakes, or you want to invert these two, have the white snowflakes and then a blue blanket around the snowflakes, and then I used the blue for the border. Now because I did the bigger version, the twin size, I needed 11 skeins of my main color and 2 skeins of the blue. And if you're doing the throw size, it's still the same number of the blue for the snowflakes and the border, and you'll probably use approximately 7 skeins of the white or your main color. Now another option is if you don't want a border, then you only need 1 skein for the one skein is pretty much just for the snowflakes. So if this is what I have left over after doing the border. So let's get started. Okay, let's get started. So I have my graph paper that I designed the pattern on with the snowflakes, as you saw before, but once again I'll leave in the description below the link to my website, where there'll be a downloadable link where you can get the PDF of this pattern. So where we're gonna start is this corner right here. That is going to be our first tile or box of the corner to corner. So we're going from this box, work our way out to this corner. So we're going to keep increasing up until we get to this corner on the left side, and then we're going to stop increasing so that way we get the straight edge, and we're going to only increase on one side so that way we can keep going across, and then once we get the length that we need of the blanket, then that's when we start to decrease on both sides, and we'll eventually get to the opposite corner where we began. So I'm not sure if it'll show up on the video, but I numbered these two squares, part of the snowflake, so that way I know where I'll start introducing the blue yarn to make the snowflake. So the first square that I hit will be in row 19. So up until then it's just going to be the white. So if you're not familiar with the corner to corner, we're going to first start off with a slip knot. You want 6 to 8 inches left in the tail. Just tie in that slip knot, and then we're going to chain 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then from the 4th chain from the hook, we're going to do a double crochet. This loop here does not count. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 double crochet. And then we have 2 remaining chains. So we're going to do a double crochet in one in each of those remaining 2 chains. So here's our second, and then wrong stitch, double crochet into that last chain. Okay, and we just did our first tile or box. So the way to, let me just take out the hook, the way to look at it is that this tile or box is the first one right here on the corner in the right side, and it will be this way. So when you work, just to orient yourself, just to see where things are going, just keep the tail facing downward. So let's go on to the second row, and then to keep track of where you are, you can always just put that here, take a pen, and then just cross off that box, and then we're going to turn our work to do the second row. We're going to chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And just as before, we're going to do a double crochet into the 4th chain from the hook. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then a double crochet in the remaining 2 chains. In each of the remaining 2 chains. So just like we did with the first box. Okay, so here is this box. That will be, should sit right on top of the first box. So it should be like this. So that way we're building up the right side of the blanket, but they need to connect. So you find that chain space gap That was between the double crochets and the turning chain. We're going to do a slip stitch. If you're not familiar with a slip stitch, you just insert the hook into that chain space, yarn over, pull through. So we got 2 loops. This first loop, we're going to pull through the second loop. So now they are connected. So, but now we need the one that should sit right next to, on the left side of the first box we did. So we're going to do chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to do 3 double crochets all in that chain space. So 1 double crochet, there goes the second one, and then the third one. So there is row 2. So as you can see, you start seeing the corner end of the blanket. So we're going to turn our work, but I'm going to cross off what we just did. Put it over here. And we're going to do the same as we did before. Chain 6. That's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 1 in each of the remaining 2 chains. There goes the second. And then the third. Oops. There. And then we're going to connect it using the slip stitch in that chain space. Okay. To keep going, we're going to once again do a chain 3 and then 3 double crochets all in that chain space. And here's the last tile that we did in row 2. So this one that we just did is like the middle one of row 3. So we're just going to keep going up until we connecting the boxes together up until we get to the edge. So do a slip stitch to connect and then chain 3 because we're still increasing on both sides. And then 3 double crochets into that chain space. Okay. There goes row 3. Just mark it off. Do check marks or maybe a highlighter, whichever helps you keep track of where you are on this graph, on the pattern. So keep going with the same pattern of the corner to corner. So that's chaining 6. And then from the 4th chain, the double crochet, and then in each of the remaining 2 chains. And then once you have your box, you connect it to the one below with the slip stitch, and then just chain 3 and then the 3 double crochets into that chain space, and then you keep going until you reach the edge, and then turn over. You keep repeating the pattern. We'll meet back when we reach row 19, so that way I can show you how to join in the new color. So I'm ended row 18 and I can't get it all in frame, but here's the last box that I did. Here's the first box that I did. So here's my, because of my tail yarn. So on this graph, the last box that I did was right here. So when I turn it, I'll be working this box of row 19 over here. So I'm working this way from the right side going downwards towards the left. So this is the first. Here is red on the graph, but where I'm going to be introducing the blue yarn. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the 9th box in is where I'll be doing the blue yarn. So let's get started on that. Let me turn my work. Get this a little bit more situated. Okay. There we go. Okay. Okay, so let me chain 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to do 8 more of the white yarn, and then as I'm about to finish the 8th box of the white yarn, we'll meet back up. So I did the 8th box from the graph. Now it's time to introduce the blue yarn to start building out this snowflake. So I loaded up my giant clothespin with the blue yarn and just unravel a little bit. So normally if we would have continued with the white, we would have done the slip stitch, but I'm going to do that with the blue yarn. So leave a nice tail, 6 to 8 inches to weave in later. So we're going to insert the hook into that chain space gap, grab a hold of the blue yarn, pull it through, and then pull it through that white loop, the white loop that was left over from the previous box. So there goes the slip stitch. We're going to, since there is box is over, almost back to the white, we're going to carry the white along with us. So in the back of the blanket, just grab a hold of the tail end and then the white as well. So you're carrying it over close to that edge. So with the other fingers, that will be in the back. And we're going to chain 3. And then when we insert the hook, we're going to yarn over. We're yarning over the white yarn and the tail end, just to weave in as we go a little bit. And then we'll weave in the rest afterwards. Do the same thing. We'll do the double crochet over those 2 yarns that are in the back once again for the 3rd double crochet. And you can drop the blue yarn. We'll weave in that later. But we're going to continue to carry the white over. So here it goes. And then, so we did the first blue box. So now we're going, since we're going diagonally, the next box over is still a blue. So let's connect those two together with the slip stitch. And then chain 3. And the 3 double crochets, still over that white yarn, because we're about to pick it back up. Okay. There goes our first 2 blue boxes of the snowflake. So as we continue to go down, the rest of row 19 is white. So we're going to drop the blue for now, and then because since we're turning over, you want to make sure that the working yarn of the blue is in the front of your project, so that way when we flip it over, the working yarn is in the back. So, and this is one of the reasons why I like to use giant clothespins when I do graphgans. It's because now I can just clip it to what I just did with the blue. It makes the work a little easier when we're using multiple yarns. So now I pick up the white yarn that was traveling on through as we did the 2 blue boxes and do the slip stitch. And then continue on as we have been all along. And the white will be for the remainder of row 19. So let's look back at our pattern. Just set this aside for a little bit. So we just finished the blue, the 2 blue, and we're going to keep going with the white. And when we pick back up, we'll be working from the bottom of the blanket, going upwards diagonally, and then this is where we're going to introduce the blue yarn. Sometimes if there's a gap, where because it's going to work outward, since we're going diagonally, I have another clothespin ready to go with the blue yarn. For me, it works better that way. So you can see which, if you just want to keep going with one yarn, with one clothespin, if you're using a clothespin, or use another clothespin or 2 more. And then we keep going. So we're going to continue to increase, going with back and forth with the white as the pattern goes, up until we reach this corner. We're going to keep increasing until row 44, and then we'll meet back up then, so I can show you how to decrease on one side while still continue to increase on the other side. So we're at the point where we're going to start decreasing on the left side, but I wanted to show this part first. As you can see, I have no ends here, and that's because every few rows I would start weaving in my ends, just so, because I don't want to get to the end of the blanket and then have all these ends to weave in. So I like to weave as I go along. Let me know in the comments below to see, because I would love to know if you like to weave in as you go along, just as I do, or if you like to weave in all at the end. Okay, so let me bring out the drawing. Okay, so at the bottom left corner of the blanket, this corner is when we would start doing row 44, going from the left corner and then going diagonally outwards towards the right. So we don't want to start to decrease just yet on that corner, because we need to make that corner still. And so once we reach the right for that row 44 and we come back down, which is this tile right here that I've yet to do, this is when we're going to start to decrease on the left side. So I still have that tile to do, because it would go here, and every time you decrease on one side, it's that last tile that you do that would indicate when to decrease. So let me do that tile as we've been doing all along. Okay. 2 second double crochet, and now the last. We need this tile and the bottom left corner, that previous tile from the other row, to connect. So we're going to do that slip stitch, and we're not going to chain 3 or anything else, because that would be increasing on the left side. Just a slip stitch. So let me just take the hook out so you can see it a little bit better. So you can see this is the bottom left corner of the blanket, and with just that slip stitch connecting these two tiles, you can start to see the left edge of the blanket forming. Okay, so now we're just gonna flip it over. You can see the remaining steps for the decrease. To keep the edge of the left side of the blanket, we need, and then to continue doing the tiles that will be in between these two and so on, we need to get to this point, that chain space. So in order to do that, we need to do a slip stitch in each of these 3 double crochets, and then one more in that chain space. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then one more in that chain space. And by just doing those slip stitch, we maintained the left edge of the blanket. No more increasing on that side. So we continue to do this row as we've been doing all along. Chain 3, because if we do the chain 6, that would be adding more chains and that we would not need for this side. And then our 3 double crochets, and then the slip stitch to join these 2 tiles. So as you can see, the left edge is continuing to form. I'm going to keep going as we normally do. And then when we get to the right side of the blanket, we're still going to increase. So at that end where we had that B, we're still going to do the chain 3 and the 3 double crochets, because again we're still going to increase on the right side. And then when we come back down and we reach the left side, we're just going to do a slip stitch so that we're not increasing anymore on the left side. And we're going to go back and forth, decreasing on the left side, increasing on the right side. When we get to row 67, which would be the top right corner of the blanket, that will be the last increase that we do on the right side. After that point, we're going to decrease on the left, decrease on the right, and then work our way back and forth, just decreasing on both sides, because when we do that, we're just going to end up with one more tile at the end, and that will be the top left corner of the blanket. We're at the point where we're going to start to decrease on both sides, the left and the right, and I hope that you are enjoying crocheting this blanket as much as I am, because it's really turning out nice and it's warm and cozy. So the first tile of row 67 is not yet to be decreased because we still have to form that tile. So when we work our way back up for that second tile of row 67, that's when we're going to decrease, which I have done here. I just, as we did with the left side, is just joining those two tiles with a slip stitch. And we're going to decrease by just doing slip stitches across these 3 double crochets and the chain space gap here, so we can do the next row. So we're going to meet back up when we have finished crocheting the last tile, which is the top left corner. So the blanket is done and it is very cozy. Let me know what you think so far of the blanket in the comments section below. Once again, the border is optional, so if you don't want to do it, it's just as lovely as is. But if you do, so let's get into it. I'm using the blue to add more color to the blanket. It's the same blue as the snowflakes, so let me put that to the side. So first you want to do a slip knot onto your hook, same size hook as the blanket, the L hook, and you can just pick any corner. I'm doing the top right, and into that chain space right here, we're going to do a slip knot to connect the yarn. And now we're going to do the border, which right now is the single crochet. So insert the hook, bring it around, and then pull through. And then you'll notice that in each of these tiles, that the double crochets makes a space in between, and in between where it's upright, the tile, or sideways. And then here there is a space that it makes this double crochet. It makes 2 spaces right here because of this yarn. So we're going to work in between these spaces, a single crochet. So we insert the hook, wrap the yarn around once, and pull through, wrap the yarn around once again, and then pull through those 2 loops. So here's where it's sideways, so we're going to put in a single crochet into each of those spaces. Here's a space in between those 2 tiles, a single crochet there, and then in between these double crochets. So just keep going along that border of the blanket with a single crochet, and we will meet up again in the opposite corner. So for me, it will be the top left corner, so that way right before it, so that way I can show you. I'll show you how to navigate that corner with a single crochet. Here we are at the last tile, so I'm going to do a single crochet into that first space and then another into that second space. And now we're ready to do the corner. So we're going to chain 2 and then into that same space where we just did that single crochet, do another single crochet. There's the corner. It will become more evident that it is a corner once we start on the left side, or whichever side you are on. So here's that next space, do a single crochet and keep going in all those spaces. So now, since the tiles are in the opposite direction from where I was, it's going a little backwards from where I was before. So here's that first space that was bigger when it was sideways, and here's that little tiny space right there. So sometimes you just have to feel for those spaces using your fingers and then just keep going. Okay. So as you can see, now the corner is more evident. So keep going this way as we have been all around the blanket, all 4 sides, well, 3 sides now. And then when you get to the corner, just single crochet, chain 2, single crochet all in that same space. And then we'll meet back up where we first started in that first corner, so I can show you how to join those 2, and then we'll start on the second row of the border. Okay, so we're almost at the point where we're meeting up with the first single crochet that we did for the border. So when the tiles were going sideways, we did a single crochet on either side of this yarn that separates, that it's a part of the double crochet. But for the other 2 sides of the blanket, when the tile goes sideways, it's just a turning chain, so you have an empty space. So to keep in line with this tile, where we did it on either side of that piece of yarn, we had 2, so we're just going to do 2 single crochets in that turning chain space, and then just keep going as we've been doing all along. And then we're almost at the corner, so we're going to do a single crochet. Oops, missed this chain space right here. Okay, so we're going to do a single crochet into, let me undo that. So here's the turning chain space, and here's the first single crochet that we did. So as like our other corners, we did a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, but since we already have that first single crochet, we just need to do a single crochet, chain 2, and then we're going to slip stitch into that first single crochet that we did to join these ends together. And that's the first row of the blanket, of the border. So to do row 2, in between these single crochets, where my finger is pointing through, we are going to do another single crochet. So it's not on top of the stitch of the single crochet, but in between those single crochets. So we're going to chain 1. Here's that single crochet right there. So here is that, and then here's the second single crochet. So in this space right here, we're going to do a single crochet. And here's the next space, so we're going to do a single crochet there, the next space, and it's in between the single crochet from the first row. Keep going. And that's the pattern that it makes. So just keep going, and then we'll meet up when we get to the corner, so the top left corner, so right before it. Okay, so we're almost at that corner that we created in the first row. So let's just finish up this row. Okay, and here we are. So in this corner that we did for the first row, just as before, we're going to do a single crochet, chain 2, and do a single crochet all in that space of the corner. And then we'll go on to the next side. Fix this bit. Okay. And that was the wrong stitch. So I'll undo that and then do the single crochet. Sorry about that. So I'm going to keep going into the spaces that's in between the single crochet. I'm just going to keep doing this all around the blanket. And when we reach the corner of the first row that we created, I'm going to do the same single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. We'll meet up one more time when we're at the fourth side of the blanket right before the corner. Okay, so I just have one more single crochet and then we get to the corner. So let me just do that. And if you recall, the first single crochet of the second row was on top of the first one of the first row, which was, we made part of the corner for that first row, but we don't have any single crochets into that corner. So I'm going to do a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, wrong stitch. Okay, so single crochet to round it out, and then we're going to slip stitch into the first single crochet of the second row to join it up. And I'm going to cut off the yarn to fasten off. And we are done with the blanket. All we have to do now, this is how much I had left of the chilled blue yarn for the that I needed for the border. If you want to, you can keep going. I'll probably have enough yarn for maybe 1 or maybe 2 rows, but probably definitely enough for 1 more row for the border if you so choose, or you can save this yarn for another project, which is nice. So I just have these 2 ends to weave in. Let me just quickly do that. Just go in one way, then down the other way, in the other row, going around this corner just to continue to weave in the ends. And then back again. Just pop the ends. And we are done with this blanket. It's so nice and cozy. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and that you'll enjoy crocheting this blanket. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up and let me know if you have any questions or comments in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to answer you right back. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button below so you'll be kept updated on all the latest videos from the Working Yarn. Wherever you are in the world, happy crocheting. Bye!